Greetings to my fellow hiccup heroes across the world. Welcome to another episode of the Hiccups and Healing podcast, the ultimate destination for anyone navigating the tumultuous waters of high conflict co-parenting. I'm your host, Saide Saddiq-Cisse, and today's episode is a big deal. We have a very special guest with us I have highlighted in a previous episode about forgiveness. Today's guest was featured on Oprah Winfrey's Love and Marriage Huntsville on her own network and has been recognized by the likes of Forbes magazine, Insight News, and Star Tribune for her dedication to promote healthy and cooperative co-parenting and helping families to navigate the challenges that comes with the territory. She is a mother, a co-parent, an author, and a serial entrepreneur with a goal to save lives one co-parent at a time. Her name is Alysha Price, the founder of the Minnesota-based organization, The Price Dynamic, a company that provides tools and support for families navigating co-parenting challenges, and the author of a best-selling book, It's Not Complicated. As a co-parent herself, Alysha understands the struggles and triumphs of the co-parenting journey. Her personal experience and professional knowledge have led her to create an organization that she knew that she needed as she was navigating her own co-parenting dynamic. She needed a resource that empowers families to strengthen their family dynamics and overcome obstacles. In today's episode, we explore Alysha's personal story and the motivations behind creating the Price Dynamic and some of the challenges she faced in her own co-parenting journey and how those experiences inspired her to fill the gap in services for families facing similar situations. Alysha shares valuable insights on the importance of empowering families to solve their own co-parenting obstacles and the significance of self-sufficiency and self-empowerment. As a co-parenting expert, Alysha sheds light on the common struggles faced by co-parents and the ways in which high conflict dynamics can impact families, particularly in the Black community. She emphasizes the need for respectful communication, creating a shared vision for the family, and breaking the cycle of broken homes. During our conversation, Alysha highlights the role of gender roles in co-parenting and the importance of expanding our thinking around traditional roles. She emphasizes the value of stability and positive role models for children, whether in single-parent households or co-parenting arrangements. Alysha also discusses the three pillars of support provided by the Price Dynamic: coaching, parent education, and supervised visitation. She explains how these resources help families navigate the challenges of co-parenting, build stronger relationships, and create a supportive community. In the closing segment of the episode, we reflect on the importance of empowering men as fathers and creating a culture that appreciates and supports their role in the family dynamic. Alysha shares her vision for a future where men are empowered as leaders and fathers, and where families work together to create positive and stable environments for children. Join us for this enlightening conversation with Alysha Price as we explore the world of co-parenting, the challenges faced by families, and the transformative power of empowering co-parents to overcome obstacles. Let's dive in. Hello, Miss Alysha Price, and thank you for being with us today on the Hiccups and Healing podcast. Can you share a little bit about your journey and the inspiration behind creating the Price Dynamic?
Of course, I'm Alysha Price, and the company is named after myself. So the Price Dynamic, hence family dynamic, the Price Dynamic. So what I decided to do was to utilize the tools and strategies that I had learned in my own family to support other families. And I am a co-parent. I do know very well what the struggle may feel like, or even the triumphs of getting to that space and place where you're now co-parenting. The more that I had worked in social services, I realized that there was a gap in services to families. There were a lot of organizations that were supporting families once something went wrong and were setting themselves up in a way to say, if you're not able to handle what's happening in your family dynamic, you can come to us, instead of saying, here's how you handle it. Here's how you strengthen your family. And by the way, what's happened to you is not wrong. It's not bad. You're okay. You can work through this. And as a matter of fact, you actually actually already have all of the tools inside to overcome, right? And so I recognize that in the social services that I had become acquainted with or had partnerships with in my previous job, that many of them weren't doing that. They weren't empowering families to solve their own obstacles or issues that may happen for them. And so I felt the need to create the Price dynamic because it was just what I needed when my family was transitioning from being a two-parent household to one parent or parenting across households. And so I really utilized my own personal experience as well as professional knowledge to come up with the concept of what the Price dynamic is. Also, a fun tidbit is that I was raised by parents who were never married. I was co-parented. I grew up and created a very similar family dynamic, and I was determined to make sure that it was better than what I experienced. And I want to be able to help other parents to do that as well. And so the Price dynamic is here.
Wow, okay. So was there high conflict in the beginning of your co-parenting experience, or did you always have the epiphany to prioritize easy and healthy co-parenting for the benefit of your child?
In my particular family dynamic with my co-parent, initially it was, I wouldn't say high conflict based on what now my professional experience has helped me to see, but there were definitely times where we did not see eye to eye, we were not getting along, and we were really fumbling through what would co-parenting look like. Neither of us had a pristine example of that, right? So I grew up, as I mentioned, in a co-parenting family dynamic, which was sometimes on again and off again. Sometimes my parents lived together and then sometimes they didn't. And so I went through that same kind of back and forth structure with them. And then my son's father grew up without his father in the home. And so we were operating really off of the examples that were created for us. I think it's fair to say that because our son was planned, we wanted him, but what became very difficult for us is that when we became parents, our expectations of each other and the ways that we would partner with each other significantly changed. At a stage, I was growing as a mother where I think it's fair to say, and my son's father would agree, where he was not quite as mature as I was at the time when he became a parent, although he wanted to be a parent. And those are things that we just didn't know until we jumped in. We struggled with dating and what does it look like to introduce our child to other people. We struggled with how often would he get him versus when he wouldn't get him. So my particular co-parenting dynamic was never really high conflict based on what I have learned in this role now. But there were definitely times where we did not get along. It was not always easy. However, we had a foundation because we were friends prior to having our son, and he was planned. So the love was there. There was always this desire to make it work with each other. And, at times where we're just literally, listen, I really don't want to have drama with you. And so I know what it feels like to work through those tough moments though, but we were never really as high conflict as what sometimes I am privy to in my role.
Okay, and so from your experience dealing with high conflict co-parenting, what impact do you believe it has on society as a whole?
High conflict parenting or in co-parenting, and I would love to also state that we talk a lot of times about co-parenting as if it's about parents who are not living in the same household or a relationship that has dissolved. But co-parenting absolutely also applies to parents living in a household together and or married. It's about having a shared sense of values and discipline and ways of raising your child or children. And so when you have a conflictual relationship where you're not able to partner to do that, the ways that it affects society is that we have so many organizations that are now focused more on intimate partner violence. They're focused more on domestic violence. Some of those types of things could be geared more directed towards education for children, right? Stable housing. But in what we're finding more now is that more organizations are really working on what does it mean to support people socially and how they're interacting with each other. And so fundamentally, if you're not able to get along, also you're teaching your children by what you're modeling is, how they should then interact with others, right? So then we have children children going out into the world, not understanding why their energy is low, their vibration is low, they're argumentative with others, or they're secretive because they're not able to share what's happening in their household. There's just a lot of traits that our children take on and learn as a means for really coping, right? And so they go out into the world and continue that same behavior that they're seeing in the household. It's so important to remember that the ways that we show up for our children, they're watching and they are modeling. They are absorbing everything that we do.
Oh, wow. I completely agree. And so before working on your personal co-parenting dynamic, did you already have an understanding of the importance of co-parenting?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I grew up in a very urban community where lots of my friends and people that I knew grew up without a father in their household or understood what that conflictual co-parenting dynamic would look like. And so much so that we thought it was normal. And we talked about it in a way, my dad lives here, or this is my step parent, or I don't know my father. And you start to become a little bit more disturbed, I think, by that being the norm. And how do we do something different? And I think once I grew and became more aware in a professional role of how these family dynamics were affecting children academically, then I thought, well, you know what? We really need to look deeper into this. The other thing I'll add is there's so many stereotypes that come with family dynamics that are divided or separated or co-parenting and parenting across households. And that was another push for me because one of the indicators that I kept seeing coming up in terms of academic failure for children was being raised in a single parent household. And it doesn't always constitute a child not being able to be academically or socially successful. And so wanting to have a voice in that space to be able to help educate and share that there are strategies and tools that can help when you are co-parenting, and that it is really a norm at this point with family dynamics, gender roles, the ways our society has changed. There are a lot of people that are choosing to co-parent.
So you briefly mentioned gender roles. Can you speak a little bit more about the role of gender in co-parenting?
Yes. I think with co-parenting, what's important is when you talk about gender roles, it gives your children an opportunity to see you do things differently. Historically, we talk about where the mother is more in the house and the homemaker and cooks and cleans and dad goes out to, well, when you're in a co-parenting family or dynamic and your parents are living across households, you get to see your parents do all of those roles, right? You're not sticking dad to just you go out and make money. You're watching dad cook dinner and do laundry for you. So in a way, it does help to expand our thinking around gender roles. But the other thing that is very new, I believe, in our society is that many people are choosing based on their sexuality or sexual orientation on how they want to construct their family and choosing to have children and co-parent. So we have artificial insemination that's happening. We have people that are just choosing by meeting another person that they believe will be a great donor and choosing to have children together. There's so many dynamics that co-parenting cross, and gender roles absolutely come into play when we start to talk about sexual orientation and partner types and all of those sorts of things. But giving our children the opportunity to have two stable parents, regardless of gender, is extremely important.
Okay, I completely understand. And so in one of your past interviews, you emphasized that co-parenting is not just a surface level issue, but a deep-rooted matter. Can you expand on your thought process behind this and the importance of focusing on co-parenting as a solution to societal issues?
Absolutely. I think that co-parenting is definitely not a surface level issue. If we support families to work together, there is an immense social impact that can happen. Of course, better outcomes for children academically and socially. You also think about how it reduces conflict within the household. But when we look at co-parenting and it not being surface, not based on just the relationship that you're talking about right here, you and I, it goes back to my parents. How did they do things? How did that impact me? How did their parents' do things and it impacted them? The more that you dive into why a person is either interested in co-parenting or feels that it is difficult, it almost always dials back to their own upbringing. So it can never be surface level. It is always a journey of like, how are you healing from what your family experience was, which again is why we talk about the Price dynamic, the family dynamic, right? So what we're wanting to do is really instill in our families this strength and this ability to really uplift their dignity, right? Like you have the power to be a effective and cooperative co-parent. And I've written a book on the topic, and I always tell people all the time, it's not complicated. As adults, we make it complicated. If we were to just focus solely on what our child or children need to thrive, then it becomes very easy, right? Then it is very simple. But when our upbringing is in play, what we haven't dealt with, our own traumas are in play, it becomes much more difficult, right? And so it can never be surface level. I think also if we're focused on co-parenting, we remove a lot of the stress and strain on social services because we help to empower families. We help them to now know how to support their other family members and ending a cycle of broken homes potentially.
Okay. And so with that being said, how do you see high conflict co-parenting affecting the Black community specifically, considering the broader context of family dynamics and social issues?
I believe that high conflict co-parenting affects the Black community specifically when I think about the major emphasis put on Black women being strong, being independent, and not needing a man in order to raise children or to have a stable home. So when things are high conflict, what you almost always hear, which is a lot easier to do, is I don't need you, right? I can just do it without you. And then we build up this narrative that you have the strong Black woman, the strong Black mother. My mom did it all. My mom was my mom and my dad, when that doesn't necessarily need to be the case. But what happens is a lot of women are repeating a cycle of what they saw happen in their household or what their mothers or grandmothers are telling them to do. And so what I find is with this high conflict, instead of figuring out how to work through it, how to mediate, we're washing our hands with it, right? Which means more and more men, and Black men in particular, are not in our households or not given the opportunity to be a part of their child or children's lives because we can't work through conflict, because we don't like how we heard something, or we don't like the way someone is behaving in terms of their dating preferences now that we're not in a relationship anymore. Being really just too caught up on the things that, again, we dislike, instead of putting the focus on what our children are actually needing. And that high conflict, just that piece, that rhetoric, it just keeps being passed down from one generation to the next. I can't tell you how many women I come in contact with where they're like, this is just too difficult. It's easier to not talk to them. It's easier to not have to deal with it. Or how many men I come in contact with that are like, you know what? I want to see my children. I really want to be present, but I cannot get along with the mother. I don't want to put myself through that. So they walk away. And that's a very tough decision to make. And you have to step back and think, what could be going so wrong that the price to pay is to not have a relationship with your children? And there are some people that make it just that difficult. And so if we were able to solve for the ways that we've lost respect in our households for both men and women and the roles that they play in rearing our children and creating community, we could have co-parents all over the place, aunts and uncles and neighbors, and because it extends beyond our household. Everyone is educating our children.
Wow, you are completely right. You are absolutely right. And so with that being said, how do you empower young Black parents and co-parents to build stronger co-parenting relationships and overcome the challenges they face?
In particular, at the Price Dynamic, we have 3 pillars of support. We provide coaching one-on-one, we do parent education, and then we also provide supervised visitation, also known as parenting time. In addition, we do consulting and training with other organizations organizations that serve the population that we work with. But most important, we found is that when we're able to do one-on-one coaching with a parent who is struggling to co-parent or is contemplating whether or not they can co-parent, we are able to help them really put things in perspective, to create a new vision for what their family looks like, and to set goals and be held accountable for those things. Lots of times parents think about what they expect themselves to be as parents, and then they focus the most though on the other parent, what they're doing, what they're not doing, right? And I don't know very many people that I come in contact with in our organization who have actually planned their families. So when you haven't planned your family, you haven't created a vision for your family, right? You haven't decided in 5 years, I would like to see this happen. In 10 years, I hope for this, right? You're operating in this kind of fight or flight mode anyway, because you're like, oh, my child is here. I'm welcoming my child. I guess I got to do this thing. And so through coaching, you get an opportunity to really just sit back, drain the swamp, and actually take accountability and some ownership for what your family is and define your family. And many people haven't had the opportunity to do that with support. We also provide parent education, which I'm extremely excited about. We're growing right now, where we've created a curriculum that really supports custodial parents to have some sort of support and intervention. We noticed a lot of times non-custodial parents have been ordered to all sorts of interventions, therapy, domestic violence classes. They may have been ordered to do chemical dependency counseling or testing. So they have all sorts of people in their lives, right? Depending on, in particular, I'm talking about high conflict relationships. Whereas the custodial parent may not be ordered to any intervention. So they're not getting any support, which is absolutely unfortunate. And they're flying under the radar and being given an opportunity to stay the same, when we know our children need them to grow. And so we've created a co-parenting curriculum called COPE, which is co-parent education and engagement. And the program that works specifically with custodial parents is our intensive program. So it's a number of weeks where a group of parents will come together and flush it out, work through, what are the things that they have done that may be adding to the conflict. It's an opportunity to really see yourself and get some support from your community so that you can withstand the things that happen with co-parenting. Lots of our parents are looking for support from their parents, from their family, who have also done the same thing. So if you're trying to break the cycle, you need to create a new community of support so that you have a growth mindset. You can work through some of the conflict instead of hearing from your mom, oh, when your dad did that, this is what I did. And you already know yourself that didn't work for you in your upbringing, because now you're repeating that same cycle. And so it's an opportunity to learn, to heal, to grow, and do that in a community setting. And then we also provide, as I mentioned, supervised parenting time, which most of the time is court ordered or issued. And I want to just share that for some people, they hear that and they think that it's a negative thing. And I want to make sure that people know it's not necessarily. We have fathers and mothers who are doing supervised parenting time because they petitioned the court, because they haven't been able to see their child or children. And they're using our facility or a similar service to begin to reunite with their children, to have the parenting time while they're working through custody matters. So just to educate and be aware that supervised parenting time is not always because a parent has done something wrong, but because a parent is actually taking the steps to do the right thing.
Okay, so would you consider supervised visitation as an initial arrangement for reentry parents seeking to reunite with their families after being in prison, knowing the challenges they may face?
Absolutely. To reunite in a setting where there's a professional that can support you, right? If your child or children don't know what to talk about, don't know what to say, you don't know what they like, you have someone there that can coach you through that visit, and someone that's a buffer. And it also, and a lot of times, makes the non-visiting or custodial parent feel a bit more comfortable before you transition to now you're going to someone's house that you don't know or the other parent doesn't know. So it's definitely an opportunity to work through some of those parenting parenting skills and figure who are you and build a relationship. We have a lot of parents that take time to do that. And it's also a really great way if you haven't had an opportunity to see your children and there is a high conflict family dynamic, to take initiative and set those visits up. You don't always have to be court ordered if the other parent agrees to utilizing the space. And then you have a third party who's able to observe that you are parenting well, that you do have a rapport with your child, that you appear to create a safe space for them. And you take that documentation to the court and can arm you to move to the next stage or phase in what your parenting plan would look like.
Wow, that beautifully highlights the importance of an organization like the Price dynamic. How would you respond to individuals who are dealing with toxic co-parenting situations and are striving for a better dynamic but finding it difficult?
I would absolutely say trying mediation would be great. If mediation doesn't work or you think it may not work, there's still no reason to not try it. A huge thing that people don't understand is that when you're fighting for custody or more time with your children or trying to stabilize what a family dynamic looks like, a track record showing that you're doing that is essential. So if you schedule a mediation and it doesn't go well, guess what? You have now documentation that shows you took the initiative to set it up. The other parent was disgruntled, wasn't able to do it. You move on, you do supervised visitation. Now you have documentation from a center that shows you're consistent, you're at every visit. The other thing that's extremely important that I want to highlight is that when you take the initiative to set up visitation with your child, if you're in a very high conflict, toxic situation, the more consistent you are in, say, for instance, doing visitation, you're building rapport with your child that now goes against the narrative that they've been hearing about you. And it may be a short amount of time, but they're able to sit and play a game with you and watch a movie with you, talk with you, share what's happening in school with you, and see you in a light that the other parent has not been painting you in. And so then children get to a point where they're like, they let their guard down. All they knew before was what their other parent was telling them about you. And so it gets them to a space where they now have their own relationship with their parent, and they begin to question some of the things that they've heard or that they've been told about their parent that sometimes may not be true. And so I would encourage people to never give up and to always create that paper trail that shows that you were intentional and consistent about that time with your children.
So, community resources, social services, and policy initiatives can play a crucial role in promoting healthy co-parenting and creating a supportive environment for families. In your view, what role can they play in addressing high conflict co-parenting and supporting families?
I think the role that community, especially social service organizations, can play in supporting co-parents is really promoting self-sufficiency. If we start to help our families know that you have the tools, believing in their inherent dignity, not judging them, and helping them to expand their thinking also around what family looks like. We do talk oftentimes around it takes a village, right? And so community organizations or social services may even have language like that in their mission or their vision statement. But if it truly does take a village, that village should be empowering parents to work with each other instead of standing in the gap of that parent. Instead of saying, you don't need the other parent, we're going to provide this resource to you. It should be great. We have this support for you, but how do we engage that other parent? How do we, because there is some times where you can't, right? So I know there will be some people that say, but I just can't co-parent. That's okay. But what you also want to think about is then who can you co-parent with? Because our role as parents is to provide responsible adults that can help to educate our children and create a network, if you will, around our children that helps to stabilize them and teach them things. We as parents don't have it all figured out, and we don't have all the knowledge, but there are basketball coaches, there are football coaches, there's pastors, there's school social workers. All of those people are an extension of your co-parenting dynamic. And so our social services can show up in that way. If we have more agencies that saw themselves as that important in helping families to stabilize themselves. Not just I'm passing you a resource, but that my presence alone, you have someone that's an extension in your family, that your children can see another positive role model in their community. Those things are extremely important. And I think sometimes social service organizations or agencies see themselves as just the Band-Aid instead of you yourself have an influence on how that person may communicate, may parent. And I will even go on take a stretch here and say, I've seen so many times where children will come into a meeting with their parent to meet with the case manager, and they're sitting there, and just to see that interaction, right? To see your parents talk in a professional manner with another adult, and that exchange or that interaction, that they're soaking those things up. We want to share that kind of thing with our kids in the community. So I think social services should see themselves as more than just a resource, but an extension of how we're educating our kids.
Wow. Your passion and dedication to this work is quite evident. And so, in closing, I would love to hear your vision for the future in addressing high conflict co-parenting, both within the Black community and society as a whole.
What I envision would be really a world where Black men and women will go back to respecting one another and finding the value in the things that we uniquely bring to our community. We all have a role. It doesn't have to be about gender, but it just has to be about the way we nurture and care for our children and bring them up to be better than what we've experienced. And we need to partner and work together to do that more often. I personally will say I would say an affinity for fathers, and I want to support more fathers to have a voice, to not feel like they would need to just wash their hands. The system is against me. No one wants to hear my side. They'll always take the woman's side over mine. I would love to do more around empowering men, changing their language around what parenting looks like, having more awareness of their value and what they bring, and having a growth mindset, really helping them to be empowered in what their role is as a parent. Right now, men have to fight for rights around parenting. It's not just given. And so with that, I would also say I have a vision for men being a little bit more stingy, a little more selfish with their seed, right? And being intentional about having children with people that you get along with and that you respect and that you also know. We see a lot of times that people have children and now you're in a relationship with someone because you're supposed to raise a child, but you don't really know this person. And so I have a vision for people getting back to what it means to respect themselves enough to know who they're with and to build accordingly.
Okay, and so what steps do you believe we can take as a community, society, and world to manifest that vision?
The first step in my mind is we need to empower men. We need to make sure men know that you are appreciated as fathers. You have a role as fathers. Family should not exist without you. And if we could do more to lift men up and help them understand their value as fathers, I think that so much would change. We need more women to see men as leaders. So we need to be empowering men, to lead and to come to the table with a clear vision. So helping them to say, this is what I want for my child or children, or when I have children, or this is what I desire. When men have a clear vision, women are able to follow that. And so we need to empower our men to be strong fathers and to really see themselves as that. I will say, though, in closing, on the heels of Mother's Day, I want to say Happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers. We know that you work extremely hard, and in all fun, Mother's Day was your day. If you're a single mom, you do not get to celebrate Father's Day.
In closing, I want to express my gratitude to Alysha Price for sharing her valuable insights and expertise on co-parenting. Her personal journey and dedication to empowering families through the Price dynamic are truly inspiring. Remember, Hiccup Heroes, co-parenting can be a challenging journey, but with the right tools, support, and mindset, we can create strong foundations for ourselves and our children. Let's embrace the opportunity to work together, communicate respectfully, and prioritize the well-being of our children. If you found value in today's episode, I encourage you to connect with Alysha Price and explore explore the resources offered by the price dynamic. Remember, you are not alone on this journey, and there are resources available to support you every step of the way. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations on the Hiccups and Healing podcast, where we continue to explore topics that help us navigate the challenges of co-parenting and embracing the healing that comes with it. Thank you again for joining us today. If you found this episode insightful, please feel free to drop a comment and share with us your favorite part of the conversation. Be sure to also subscribe to our YouTube channel, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay strong, stay hopeful, and keep healing.